Hey everybody, my name's Steve Machuga from StackUp.org. How y'all doing out there?
So, Steve, talk a little about your charity StackUp. What is StackUp all about?
So StackUp, we're a military charity. We support U.S. and allied veterans through gaming and geek culture, and that translates into four main pillar programs that we have. We have the thing that started it all, our supply crates, where we box up Xboxes, PlayStations, and send them all over the world to men and women deployed overseas, to folks recovering in military hospitals, and the individuals who might be struggling back home. We have our air assault program, where we fly disabled or deserving veterans to various gaming events around the world, Comic-Con, E3, PAX, all those things like that. We have our Stacks program, where we have volunteer efforts around the globe, little teams of our red shirt volunteers that go out and do good in their neighborhood. And then lastly, we have our 24/7 suicide prevention team online, our mental health group of trained volunteers through Discord called the Overwatch program, where if somebody's having a bad day, we have folks readily available to talk with them and kind of talk them down. So yeah, that's us.
That's great. How long has StackUp been around? How long have you guys been doing this?
This is year 6, right? I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing this since 2010. I originally started doing charity work with a little group called Extra Life. I was the editor-in-chief for a gaming blog called Sarcastic Gamer, and that was the birthplace for Extra Life. And they do a lot of work with sick kids. I just never really rang with me. I didn't, I don't have any children of my own, so it turned into one of these like, okay, I'm doing this and we're doing a good thing, but it didn't resonate. And then when I went off and struck out on my own, I was like, well, hey, no one's doing anything for veterans or the troops. This is a wide open space here in the game space. Let's do this. And so, yeah, that's how it started out. And then StackUp became a thing. Veterans Day, November 11th, 2015 was the official start date.
It's always difficult when you work in charity because there's so many people in the world that need help, and you want to do as much as you can, but you have to kind of be centralized focused. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you would never sleep, and you'd be working 24 hours a day, and
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because it turned into one of these things where, once we started to get a little traction, of course you get detractors and haters on the internet if you're doing anything good. And then, people will be like, well, why aren't you addressing the problem of veteran homelessness or veteran employment or, something real? Why are you just getting them Xboxes? You could really help. And it's like, okay, first off, this is just how I decided to help. This was fun for me and I wanted to have a good time. And, there are plenty of other charities doing that work already, that it was just like, well, I wanted to do something cool and fun and something in my lane. And that wasn't being serviced in the game space, because I started in the game space through, Extra Life and Sarcastic Gamer. And I saw that nobody was taking care of the troops. I was like, okay, there's an opportunity here. Let's fill this void. And we've been doing this a long time, and nobody has, there are dozens and dozens of gaming charities now, and still no one is attempting what we are doing. You kind of have to have a specific, not just tone, but you have to have a knowledge base. I mean, you have to know veterans. You have to generally in order to be successful at this, you have to speak the language. It's hard to fake the funk, so to speak. That is a part of how we've been successful over the years. So,
pandemic over this last year, did that affect your charity at all? Did it impact it negatively? How did that affect just the overall status of StackUp for the stay-at-home orders in the pandemic?
We have had our own waves. There's been waves of pandemic, and we've had our own waves of pandemic. The first wave was, obviously everybody being locked down, and that crippled our volunteer efforts because nobody was going out and doing anything. And that crippled our air assault program, which was us flying folks to like Comic-Con and E3 and things like that. And it's like, okay, well, now no one's going anywhere. So we stepped it up over 2020 with, more Xboxes and more PlayStations and sending more supply crates to people. We have a program where we send out gaming computers called our Retrofit program. So we made up for not spending any dollars toward those missions in just sending hardware. Well, now there's a global chip shortage on everything, and so not only our computers but not only are PS5s and Xbox One X, Series XXX, whatever they're calling it, are impossible to find, but now even the last gen consoles are getting scarce, and we're using distributors that Sony and Microsoft are using right now, and they're just like, ooh, we're gonna have to, we have to play it smart. We've definitely been scraping the barrel to get donations as far as physical gear for the last couple months. It's been very interesting. We're not at the bottom of the barrel yet, but it's getting there. So it's something I never in a million years when I started doing this thought was going to be an issue. You just think, oh yeah, we'll just go buy another one. Just go to Best Buy and we'll go pick one up. No.
There'll never be shortages, right? They have these
Why would there be a shortage?
Yeah, why would there be a shortage? Yeah,
right, exactly.
Takes a year, and it's funny how long that takes to like actually people to see like everything gets shut down. Then almost a little under a year passes by, and then you start seeing all the results of the manufacturing plants not being able to send out chips and not being able to ship them, and it kind of happened all at once, which was really unfortunate for gaming in general. If you wanted to. And then, of course, the scalper situation, which doesn't make things easier either.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's like the games industry as a whole, like, yeah, it was a slow year last year, but wait till this year. It's like when we actually see the effects of people working from home and not studios being closed and things like that, people had things in the chamber from 2019 to 2020 and then shut down, and they worked around it. And now it's like, okay, well, now we're going to see the effects of building these AAA games from your living room. Let's see how that works out. So I think I saw something about Red Dead not coming out till 2025 now or something like that. It's like, oh Lord.
How has staying on the subject, like how has COVID affected your efforts in terms of like people having to stay at home to stream or having support? Like how does it affect the veterans that you've noticed on your side?
Well, the funny thing is COVID for our people, generally veterans are a solitary lot. They get out of the military and they're in such a hurry to get out of the service. They kind of forget that they're leaving behind a pretty dramatic part of their family, like all the infrastructure that you're going to be up at 6, you're going to go run a couple miles, you're going to come back, you're going to be here at 9, and then you're going to leave at 6 o'clock at night, and you've got friends to your left and right and other military members, and then you get out of the civilian workforce and none of that is there. You are free falling. So a lot of guys generally either insulate or they find other veterans to hang out with, and that's a part of where we thrive. Is we catch a lot of these folks who are kind of on the rebound of coming out of the service, and they don't really have that infrastructure anymore. And so our Discord is just a hopped up WoW guild in essence. It's just a bunch of people coming in and talking games and I had a crappy day, whatever. And then obviously our Overwatch program is for when things get serious, which is really how that got built out in the first place. You play a bunch of games together, you get a bunch of salty vets in the same Discord chat or chat room or something like that, and next thing you know, somebody says something like, I don't even want to fucking be here anymore. I'm just gonna jump off the roof or something like that. This is dumb. And it just turned into, if we don't take action here, one of these guys is just gonna kill themselves, and we will have done nothing. And so we kind of put this informal program in place, and the response we got back from the veteran community was pretty striking. So it's like, all right, let's continue to build this out. And it kind of, I hate to say that, it sounds so cheesy, it kind of leveled up our organization pretty dramatically, because trying to explain to someone like, all right, we're sending an Xbox to a guy in Afghanistan. All right, well, that's nice. But when you say we have an active 24/7 veteran suicide prevention team online, and we're trying to, we are a mental health charity, suddenly people start sitting up in their chairs a little bit. They've been taking us a lot more seriously. And we've worked with Johns Hopkins, the Center for Disease Control. They treat veteran suicide as an epidemic. And it is, but it's weird to hear it like it's it's sickness that they are trying to come to terms with, and they're not having really any success, which is why they reached out to us as like well, you guys are doing something different. What do you guys like? Gaming being such a overwhelming part of our world now, because when I started this, it was cooler than it was. But I grew up in you're gonna get stuffed in a locker, you play Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, get out of here with that card game nerd stuff. Yeah, so I grew up in that era, and now we're in an era where you've got some of the video games is outstripping, Hollywood and the music industry and sports combined, $180 billion a year. And it's just like, we're the big thing. And so, and a lot of other charities, I mean, we're starting to see other charities, not just through fundraising, but people are seeing the value of gaming as a therapeutic space, and they're reaching out to us, and it's neat to be that guy. That was never what I intended when I started this. So we're having to learn a lot. We're having to duct tape the wings onto this plane as it's taking off a lot of the time, but our heart is in the right place. so yeah.
What do you think what would you say is the biggest misconception when it comes to your charity and or veteran mental health, or the state of veterans in American society in 2021?
Oh, well, that took me a sec. I was like, what is it? America loves to talk about how much they love the troops. Loves to talk about it. They don't do anything. we get Memorial Day, we get Veterans Day, and kind of 4th of July gets snuck in there, and otherwise it's just like, obviously post 9/11 there was a swell of support for veterans, 2001 to 2005, 6, 7, and then the wars just kind of dragged on, and here we are in the year 20 of these pointless wars, and it's like, I can understand the fatigue that America feels about it, but it's just, it's definitely like, you see the enthusiasm some of these, Fortune 500 companies have when Pride Month starts, and they immediately change over all their their social media flashes to like pride flags and all that stuff. And yeah, we don't get that anymore. And I'm not equating it. I'm just saying there is definitely we support the troops, but kind of not really, kind of not, especially because we try to tell people, we work with international veterans as well. If you are an ally of ours, UK, Australia, New Zealand, any of the NATO allies, we work with them as well. And we've done a lot of great stuff internationally, but it just turns into we don't want to support the American war machine. And which is understandable. But the important thing, the military industrial complex is not a pretty thing right now. And that's why we've been in these wars for 20 years. There's a very small portion of the country that is making a lot of money from this on the backs of these wars. And that's not what we're supporting. We're supporting the warfighter, the individual who goes overseas and sees a buddy get blown up, or has a bad time, or has a close call with a mortar round or something like that, and is just struggling. And we're here to help the individual. We're not here to recruit anybody. We're not trying to say, a lot you come into our Discord and somebody will be like, hey, I'm thinking of joining the military. And generally speaking, it's like, good luck with that. I wouldn't do that if I was you. But yeah, that's a big misconception. And another, it's one of those things where we try to make sure that people hashtag always, never forget, right? And they kind of have forgotten. So it's our job to continue to support the folks who got us through those times.
I mean, especially when you speak of veterans, whether they were injured mentally or physically, they really are downplayed due to that war machine effort. Like big companies don't want to spread awareness because we don't want them to think we support the war in Iraq. Look, it's not about supporting the war in Iraq. It's about supporting the people that have to be there. They don't have a choice, right? They have to be there.
Well, see, and that's the counter argument. Is like the reason why the reason nobody has tried tackling veteran charity like we have is there's a part of the conversation where it's a perfect example, and I've used it in the past, is there is an organization out there, and I'm trying to think of what it's called. It's not Stand Up to Cancer. It's One Up on Cancer. And they are a small mom and pop charity like we are. Their mission is to provide cash money to adults who have cancer payments. That's it. They struggle because there's a feeling out there where it's like, well, if you're an adult and you have cancer, you probably did something to get that cancer. You probably smoke, or you lived a shitty life, or whatever. And it's a much harder conversation than dealing with a 5-year-old who has leukemia and never stood a chance. And it's like, that is as I call it, a blameless victim. And so for veterans, there's a very similar, we get 10% of the hate mail we get is like, well, these guys signed up for this. They knew what they were getting involved with. And it's like, yeah, they did. You're right. However, they still did it. And that means you didn't have to do it. So there's a little bit of you still owe them something here, but you can't have that conversation. Some of those people are just too far gone. If they're sitting there yelling at a military charity, you're not gonna, oh, you know what? That is a very good point. I'm glad you enlightened me with that. It's like, no, they're not. They don't want to hear it.
Speaking of that, do you think that America, just in general, like especially in gaming or just in entertainment, we become so desensitized to violence, and seeing that violence in TVs or games or whatever is a lot different than experiencing the violence when it's happening right in front of you? Is it hard to explain that to people who have no idea? Like, maybe like someone who plays like I have friends who really romanticize like Call of Duty, right, and war in general.
Yeah, it really gets in your head. Let's just say that. You really start the existential conversation that you have with yourself when you see someone die. I had a really interesting, I had a close call with a mortar round when I was over there, and I couldn't stop thinking, because it's usually, I was in Iraq, and it's usually military insurgents will pay kids to go do things that they don't want to do themselves. And, they'll, all right, here are these 3 kids, all right, go grab a mortar tube and just fire random shots at these bases or whatever. And I was sitting there thinking, it's like, okay, where was this kid when I was in high school? Like, all right, where was this kid? All right, even it was this weird, like those kind of things that are just kill streak rewards. And then, it comes into this, like, okay, there's a 3-man team running around outside our fob right now, dropping mortar rounds on us. Where was that kid a year ago? And where was I a year ago? I was in Seattle, at a Starbucks, or whatever. And this kid was in Iran getting trained up on how to, it's just weird. But these are the weird things that go through your head when you witness or are in close proximity to that level of violence and destruction. It's just like, wow, this is really weird. And I'm back here and I'm getting a cheese dog at the mall. And meanwhile, you were watching the transition from, the pullout of Afghanistan right now, and Taliban's having a field day, but it's it's been 20 years. Sorry. It's I don't know what you just want us over here permanently, or what were you planning on doing here? So it's I know exactly what you're talking about. And unfortunately, I used to use, again, another analogy is trying to explain what it's like. It's kind of like watching Orange is the New Black, right? And trying to explain to somebody who's been to prison. It's that's a pretty amazing series, and it gives you a slice of life of what it would be like to be in a woman's prison. But unless you really did hard time, and I'm sure people have ripped that show apart. It's oh, that's bullshit. This would never happen, and this is garbage or whatever. But, it's the same thing with the veteran experience. It's I could explain to you all day what it's like to be deployed to a combat zone, or going outside the wire, or in patrol, or talking to the locals, or any of that stuff. It's never gonna translate. It just doesn't. So you do the best you can, but there's always going to be that boundary there.
I think, and especially with, America specifically, because the last war we've had on our soil was the Civil War, which is a long time ago. that's the closest
I don't know
thing we've had.
I don't know if you saw January 6th at all. That was pretty close. So,
I mean, there had been stuff but close, but not to that level where the dissidents, right? Where everything happens overseas. We read about it. Maybe we see a little bit about it, but we don't have.
Oh, that was a huge piece of what transitioned me into the game space in the first place, which I was doing intelligence work over in Iraq, and we were building target decks on guys who, bad guys who were there. And then I came back home and became a government contractor, and I was working with the FBI, and I was building out target decks for bad guys. But these bad guys were down the street. And it was this bad guy, John Smith, is at the Burger King right now. And it was just it was a very weird transition for me to think about, because it was this guy can come to my family's house. My wife and I live in Manassas, and it's this guy could just he could find out that I work here and cause problems with my family, whereas opposed to, oh, that's over there. When I hopped on a C-130 and came back home, or a C5 and came back home, never thought about it again. It's those people were not real to me anymore. But having it that close to my house was oh, this is I don't know how cops do it, honestly.
Yeah, it's interesting. Where can people go to find out more information about your charity, and how can they sign up to volunteer? And what are your plans for the future once the stay-at-home orders are lifted and people can go out to conventions again and stuff like that?
Yeah, we've boy, things have definitely picked up. I know COVID's still kind of racking the country, but we are back at it again, and we're planning a second half of our year as far as conventions go. So, as far as finding out more information, stackup.org is the website. Head on over there. We've got all kinds of contact forms there that break it down. If you want to stream for us, if you want to volunteer, if you want to help out with the Overwatch program, when you want to talk to veterans and help talk them off a ledge, they're having a bad day. All of our suicide prevention team is they're all trained volunteers. They don't have any they just said, hey, I want to help out, and we put them through the paces, about 30 hours worth of training, but they're just people who just want to help out. So you can help out there. There's all kinds of things to be done. If you have old lightly used consoles or anything gear like that, you can donate that to our warehouse in Florida. There's all kinds of stuff that can be done. So head on over there, and that's how you can find out more about us.
I'm assuming have like a website too they can go visit and find out more information as well.
Yeah, that's stackup.org.